What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Deku was loved by a villain, a goddess, and a demon princess? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. How foolish. All for One roared out in the vestige world, causing cracks in the area surrounding the Izuku and Shigaraki to fall apart while taking shape as a gigantic version of himself, with the latter hovering over All for One's face. Did you think I would allow this to happen to my vessel? Tamura, you foolish boy, to this day, you've never made a single decision on your own. With a bite, Tamura Shigaraki's body disappeared into All for One's mouth as Izuku stumbled backwards, the ground coming undone underneath the green-haired vestige. The childlike form Izuku had taken continued to fall while glaring at the giant form of All for One that had appeared out of nowhere mere moments after he finally managed to get through to Tamura Shigaraki. All for One? Thanks to your success in weakening Tamura's will, Izuku Midoriya, I've managed to regain control once more. This is far from how I wanted to do this, but I suppose I have no choice thanks to the sins you've committed against me. All for One snarled as the scattered remains of the surrounding vestige world began to transform and merge into his image. It was a clever move to use One for All as a mental weapon. But in doing so, you have destroyed both it and my precious Yoichi. Foolish Shimura Tenko, All for One mocked, happily discarding the original name he had given him and forcing him to see more memories of how he manipulated him, no more than just a fragile ego, trying to cling onto your so-called life. I gave you a purpose, and you tried to bite me. As I said before, none of your decisions have truly been yours. I merely made you think you did, otherwise you would have never attained such hatred and willpower. All for One explained while memories flashed of his encounters with the fifth user of One for All, Entayutai, the pro-hero known as Smoke Eater, and the sixth user Daigoro Banjo, the pro-hero known as Lariat. It was during my time facing those two that I learned that in order to secure One for All I needed to surpass the emotions and willpower of both user and quirk. So, when my search for a soul that could help me do just that while I was being hounded by All Might turned sour, I decided that if I couldn't find someone that met those requirements, I would make one. Shigaraki struggled in the darkness as he tried to understand what was happening, being forced to see memories belonging to his former mentor. He could only watch in silence horror, slowly crumbling into pieces as he saw through All for One's eyes as he conversed with his asshole of a father and mentally manipulating him, before it switched the villain stealing Shigaraki's supposedly original quirk factor when he was only a baby and waited until the right moment to inject the quirk he murdered his family with. And it wasn't even the complete version of it, just a butchered copy that Dr. Garaki had created from that pathetic Yakuza overhaul. All of these horrible things that happened to him, the pain his father inflicted on him, the tragedy that led to the death of the three most precious to him. His mother, Hana, Mon, all the crap he had gone through since then. Forming the League of Villains, meeting Stain, becoming leader of the Paranormal Liberation Front. His loses, his victories, his sacrifices. Shigaraki could feel his mind shattering with each thought. It's too bad I wasn't able to kill you. Shigaraki's eyes widened as a familiar female voice echoed through his mind as he felt more of himself break apart in All for One's vestige, the panels of memories surrounding him coming to a stop on his battle against America's #1 hero, Star and Stripe, and the moments after he had taken her quirk from her. But be sure to remember this. A heroic spirit will always rise up against evil. So, as long as people stand up to save each other, someone will inherit that will of heroism. And make no mistake, they will strike you down. No, not yet. My hatred, my convictions? There is still something my hatred needs to destroy, even if I must use someone else to do it. Shigaraki thought to himself as he willed what small amount of control he had left with his remaining hand and mentally reached out as if to grasp something. A small wisp of red formed over the palm of his hand, pulling Speck's energy towards it. Because I was so focused on stopping Midoriya's forcing One for All into that I didn't notice it before. But that also means that they didn't either. Everything that has happened, your tragedies, your trials, tribulations, rejection or acceptance, all came from me. You were just a puppet that danced to my whim. All for One's voice echoed from all around him, driving even more despair into Shigaraki's heart and mind with his boasts, not noticing what his soon-to-be-destroyed vessel's vestige was secretly doing. A mere chess piece, a pawn meant to be sacrificed. That decree that your heart would never waver is as worthless as a dead ant on the street. In mere seconds, a tiny golden sphere the size of a golf ball appeared under Shigaraki's curled fingers, while the other vestiges dealt mental blows. You separated from the rest, and somehow did the impossible. Manipulated or not, you've always made me sick, but at least you're consistent. Feeling more of All for One's presence erase even more of his, Shigaraki reached up his hand to his throat and began to scratch it like he always did, breathing harder as even more cracks broke his vestige's body. He could see them, all the people he fought, heavily injured, and even killed, because of his choices. He. A dark chuckle escaped from the large grin that formed on the giant vestige of All for One's face, feeling malicious satisfaction in hearing Tenko scream as his body was breaking apart even faster while the cracks started to glow in a red and black light. I'll make sure to erase your soul from this body. Now vanish. With that last shout from his former master, Shigaraki felt what remained of his consciousness finally snap and the lights coming out of his body exploded outward, leaving nothing behind as both what remained of the former decay user and the mental world created from his vestige were turned into ash and fragmentation that slowly faded away the further it moved from All for One's large body. One of the larger fragments traveled downward in the same direction that Deku had been sent flying, breaking down even further to reveal a golden ball that continued its trajectory and made it past the divide that separated the two vestige worlds just as All for One severed the connection. Only one remaining thought of Shigaraki silently echoed as the final remains of his world transformed into All for One's. You better win this, hero. Meanwhile in the void, damn it, how could this have happened? Izuku gritted his teeth as his childlike body fell through the unknown void surrounding him, the green-haired boy's body returning to his teenage form while glaring up at the large monstrous mass that was All for One's vestige. I was so close to reaching him. After everyone sacrificed themselves to get me through his mental defenses. To be honest, he had known from the moment that Kudo, the second user of One for All, had told him the plan to send each of them at Shigaraki as mental bullets, that it was a reckless and very stupid plan. Not only was there the chance it wouldn't work, but it would also return him to being quirkless again. Sure, the large ember left inside him would stay in him for a while after losing it just like it had done when All Might had passed the quirk onto him, but the odds that the embers left behind would hold a candle against Shigaraki and the All for One quirk when he had difficulty fighting at full power with 6 other quirks to help him was a stretch. The best that Izuku could hope for if the plan was unsuccessful is that the strain of One for All would be too much for Shigaraki and break his body apart, just like having a body hold multiple quirk had done in the past. Like he said, it was stupid and reckless. All because of what he saw back then in that one single moment when his soul connected to Shigaraki's, of the child he had once been, crying out for someone to help. That scared child who had been abused by his father and lost his loved ones to a horrible quirk manifestation, falling into All for One's grasps when no one would bother to even look at boy. Was it messed up that he wanted to save the part of Tenko Shimura that might still be inside Tamura Shigaraki? That he knew that even if he did succeed, none of the crimes that Shigaraki and All for One had done could never be forgiven and Izuku would probably be forced to kill Shigaraki in the end? Yes. As his best friend turned bully turned rival turned friend, Katsuki Bakugo, would say, it was fucked up. It was also something that his current best friend had agreed with as well, even as she went through a similar situation with her own personal villain, Himiko Toga. The result was this war pushing him and everyone else to their limits and left both physical and mental wounds on many that would never heal. But as much as he tried to close his heart to it, Izuku wanted to be a hero and use One for All to save people, not to use it exclusively as a weapon for murder. It was a quirk that the former number 1 hero had given him just to be able to stand in the ring with everyone else, one that he had struggled for 1 year to be able to even use and another to reach a level beyond what many pro heroes were capable of. And he just threw it away without any backup plan. Like an fucking idiot, he succeeded in reaching Shigaraki, broke through the mental shields and confronted the trauma that etched itself onto Tenko's psyche with his old house and father being the source of it all, and with Nana's help, stood face to face with Tenko, only for the vestige to destroy his arms in the processes. The two conversed, and even though it seemed like both enemies had finally managed to understand each other, they both knew that their fight had to conclude one way or another. Something that Deku knew he would have to go plus ultra to come out on top, and hoped that forcing one for all to transfer to Shigaraki would deal some significant damage as well. And then all for one had to show up like some final boss trope you see in video games or comic book, continuing with the usual cliché of apparently being responsible for all of Shigaraki's misery. Because of course the narcissist with a god complex couldn't handle not being the center of attention. His actions destroy everything in the process and ejecting Izuku out of the connected vestige world. If All for One is really back in control, then this situation has gone from bad to worse. Izuku thought to himself in frustration, his eyelids scrunched closed while doing his best in trying to readjust his positioning in the void with little success. Unlike Shigaraki, All for One has a lot more experience with handling quirks of different varieties. How can I stand up to that without One for All? No, it's not over yet. I can't give up now. Hey, very nice. I can see you've got that heroic spirit down pat. As expected of our master's true successor. Huh? Izuku's eyes snapped open at the sound of a new voice echoing through his mind, just in time to see a shining, golden ball fly towards him before entering his chest. Looks like I got to you just in time. He barely had time to register what was happening before his body started to glow the same color as the sphere and the void was cancelled out in a bright flash of light. The next thing the green-haired teen realized, he was no longer falling, but instead he was laying on top of something that felt warm, grainy and strangely familiar. Sand? Not a bad spot. I could just stare out into the distance for hours. Just look at that sunrise. Blinking at one again, hearing the new voice, this time much clearer and coming from right next to him. Izuku lifted his head up to see a large figure standing several feet ahead of him with their back facing him, allowing only to see their long flowing blonde hair with 8 distinct tufts swept backward that sort of reminded him of All Might's muscular form. Wait. 8 tufts? That looked like All Might's? Star and Stripe. That's right. I am here, inside your head. That sounds like something All Might would say, right? The woman turned to face him while letting out a laugh, once again, reminding him of All Might. She donned her hero costume that just screamed American flag, only she didn't have the domino mask that he had seen her wear whenever he saw her in the news. Though, you can just call me Kathleen, or Cassie. All my bros called me Cassie. If it wasn't for the bizarre situation, Izuku would have gushed about being face to face with the #1 hero of America. The strongest woman in the world. The one whose quirk seemed to make the laws of reality bend over and lick her boots. But just how was the woman here? All her companions that traveled with her to Japan had confirmed that she died in the battle against Shigaraki, sacrificing herself and her quirk to deal a major blow to the All for One quirk from the inside. The data had suggested that her quirk hadn't survived the battle since Shigaraki wasn't able to use it. Wait, did that mean he was dead too? Did being sent down the void destroy his vestige too? And his arms were still gone, too. Oh, God, there were so many things he wanted to do. Graduate from UA, adopting Eri and watching her grow up, pursuing a relationship and get Mari. Whoa there, don't go jumping to the conclusion that you're dead already. Geez. Master did say that you had a motor mouth when you overthink things, but seriously, ha ha ha, damn. The woman laughed as she lifted Izuku by scooping him up by his armpits and helping him to his feet. I don't really understand everything that's going on right now, but we're still in the inner world? Or the vestige world, I think it was called. Don't really know myself. The last thing I remember was trying to tear apart Tamura Shigaraki and All for One from the inside after my real body gave me her final order. Oh, you're the vestige created by her quirk. But how are you here? Wait, this place. Izuku looked around in surprise as he instantly recognized where the two were standing. After all, he had come to this spot for 10 months to turn it from a trash heap into the beautiful beach spot it once was. This is Takoba Beach. Why are we here? This looks nothing like the vestige world I saw when I came here before. It's certainly better than the last place I saw. That place was just a wasteland inside a crimson void with all the stolen quirks making up the very ground All for One and Shigaraki were standing on. Kathleen huffed at the memory while crossing her arms. Memories of the rampage she had dealt to the villain somewhat fresh in her mind. Bastard thought that the others were pieces that made up his world and didn't see them more than object he could collect. The inner worlds of One for All was a large void with a big piece resembling the vault that the first user said was the origin of the quirk, and Shigaraki's was that destroyed city surrounding his childhood home. If that's how the inner world works, then that means that this beach, is my true inner world without one for all's influence. The green-haired student deduced as he and Kathleen's vestige looked around, taking in how detailed the world was down to the breeze and the sound of waves hitting the sand. It certainly is a beautiful place, but unfortunately we've got more pressing matters to deal with. We're lucky that time here moves a lot faster than in the real world, but you're about to head back there soon. The only reason you ended up here was because I managed to catch up to you in time. I'll be blunt, New Order shouldn't even exist anymore after the damage back then, and honestly, I don't think the present me is going to remain for much longer. But thanks to your actions with forcing One for All into Shigaraki, a chance opened for us. Huh? What chance? Kathleen motioned for Izuku to follow her to the gazebo at the end of the pier nearby, where the two walked in silence before coming to a stop at the railings facing out to the vast ocean in front of them. Did you know that All Might had saved my life when I was a child, back when he had come to America as an exchange student? Really? Izuku blinked in surprise at that piece of information. He knew that All Might had already started to make a name for himself back then and even learned English just so he could read up on all the missions and interviews he did while over there. But he had no idea that one of those people he saved involved the future #1 heroine. That's right, my family and I were on our way to Santa Monica Pier, just a normal outing for us. But a robber and his partner were on the run and started attacking our car. Kathleen moved forward so that she was leaning on the railing, staring down at her clenching fists. At the time, only one thought repeated over and over in my head: if I can just save my little sister. I don't care if I die. And then, he appeared. With a reassuring grin on his face and those two golden tufts of hair, I knew we were saved. Saving people with a smile, to not only save their bodies, but also their hearts. Izuku commented as he thought back his ultimate reason for wanting to be a hero, and the lessons he learned from both All Might and the seventh user, Nana Shimura. Exactly, and it was because of that I saw that symbol of peace as my master. Not as a physical one, but for the ideal that I wanted to follow when I became a pro-hero myself. I even copied his hairstyle and color, with my own 8 tuff added into the mix, just to show my devotion. Kathleen let out a sigh as a sad smile formed on her face, but in the end, while I become the #1 hero in America and the strongest heroine, I never truly was able to catch up to him. But your admiration for All Might and your sense of duty are like shackles. It creates discord in your mind. I can understand that. For so long, I didn't really understand what Gran Torino said to me about how my looking up to All Might and wanting to be like him was messing up my progress. But after everything I've seen and experienced, I started to get it. I'm not like All Might. I'll never be All Might, and honestly, I don't want to be All Might either. Izuku raised his head up to look at the sunrise shining in the distance, not noticing the heroine next to him look at him with a surprised expression. He is an amazing hero, and a goofy person at times, but I can't hold up society on my own the way he did. So many people, including me, didn't want to imagine what it would be like when he retired, or worse, died. How could the world survive without the symbol of peace? But the truth is, it needs more than a single pillar to hold it up. The world needs multiple pillars to shoulder the weight, so that everyone can help one another and create a better future together. Kathleen stared down silently at Izuku before a chuckle escaped her lips, before slamming the palm of her hand into Izuku's bare back. I guess my fellow disciple surpassed both me and our master. You're really a romantic at heart, aren't ya? Well, that's good. You're gonna need it for the battle ahead. Lifting herself up straight, Kathleen turned to face Izuku before holding out her palm, to which a golden yellow flame formed over her hand. Recognize this? Studying the flame for a few seconds as he turned to face the heroine, Izuku's eyes widened in shock as he felt a familiar pulse come from the flames. Is that All Might's? His vestige from One for All, or rather, what's left of the piece he sent after me. It was thanks to this that I was able to temporarily reform myself. From what I could gather from the brief images I got from it, his vestige found me when you were firing those mental bullets over and instead focused on restoring me instead of helping with Shigaraki's mental defense. Still the same hero he ever was, sacrificing himself to save the both of us and give you the tools needed to win. New Order combined with a little portion of stockpiled power left behind by One for All. The muscular woman smiled down at the remains of the man who saved her once more, before shaking those thoughts away. She still has one last task to complete. But the truth is, New Order is no longer the same quirk that I held. After being reduced to nothing and reconstructed by these embers, it is a completely new, stronger version that has no user now. Think of it like that old philosophy, Theseus paradox, you know about it? That's the Greek one about the ship, right? It was mentioned in that pre-Quirk Heroes franchise from America. I watched all the movies and read the comic books. Kathleen nodded her head, silently glad she wouldn't have to go too far into the subject, and grinned at that last part. Such a fanboy, but you are now officially my favorite little bro. Anyway, think about how that ship was dismantled and replaced by new pieces because of the rot, while the bad pieces were restored and reassembled into a separate ship without the rot. But while both ships look the exact same down to the smallest details, neither can be considered the original ship. Think of New Order as the restored second ship, while I am what remains of the first, and Tamura Shigaraki only sent the former with a piece of me attached. Shigaraki? Izuku frowned as he thought back to just a few moments ago, when All for One destroyed the Decay user and took over. Did he pass on a quirk while the connection was still there? Can't say that I can tell you what exactly was going through his mind at the time, but I do have a guess. Chances are, he sensed New Order being restored and gave it to you for one reason. To make sure that All for One is defeated and achieve a complete victory. Kathleen's body began to illuminate in a golden glow, wisps coming out of her form and slowly entering the flame in her hand. But like I said, this New Order is different from what I had thanks to the enhancement of One for All's residual energy. Don't know if that means that the limitations I had will be there or if it has a completely new set of rules to it. Star and Stripe, what's happening to your ouch? Izuku could finish his question as Kathleen raised her free hand and flicked the smaller boy's forehead. A grin formed on her face as she watched Izuku rub his forehead from the pain. I told you before, my bros call me Cassie. It wouldn't do for my little brother not to do the same. Don't worry about me, though. This was gonna happen once New Order fully passed onto you because it's your quirk now. I'll leave a rule in your mind to help you understand how the quirk works, but there won't be any vestiges this time. You are the new and only wielder of New Order from now on. New Order belongs to me now. I won't let you down. Tears began to well up in his eyes at her words, making her smile brightly at him. I know you won't, although, I do have two final pieces to say if you're willing to hear me out. Back in the real world, the surrounding forest trees were flying through the air from an explosion coming from the epicenter where All for One and One for All met, and fingers created from Shigaraki's body broke apart as it crashed to the ground. From it, two humanoid forms could be seen with one standing while the other was on the ground. My intermediate goal is foiled, ah. The standing figure took a step forward through the dust to reveal Tamura Shigaraki looking forward, his body damaged and no longer looking like himself, especially since a new persona was in control. All for One glanced down at his mouth with a hollow laugh escaping his lips. Oh, so there's a lingering note still there? Ah, be silent. Emerging out of his face, a mask began to form over his mouth, very similar to the hands that Shigaraki used to wear, and once it had finished forming, the second voice cracking behind All for One ceased to be heard. It looks like the spiritual damage taken has been reflected onto the physical flesh. But not only that, I can't feel the rage and hatred that fueled this body, nor the decay quirk. To think, after all these years, the vessel I spent such time on is ruined and all traces of my brother are gone now. All for One, we aren't finished. You aren't dead yet, boy. All for One remarked as he stared down at the former user of One for All in silent fury. It was a new experience, one almost similar to what he felt for the second user after he took Yoichi away. I'll be moving on to my final goal now, as hollow as it is now. The world will be mine. Izuku struggled to get back up, ready to continue the fight despite the pain he felt. I won't let why. Any attempt at standing came to an abrupt halt as the green-haired hero slipped back to the floor, revealing that he had lost both of his arms in a bloody mess just as he did in the subconscious realm. The realization of his destroyed arms signaled even more pain that caused Izuku to thrash around in agony. I see that neither of us emerged from that encounter unscathed. Not yet, I'm not done yet, Izuku thought to himself as he struggled to ignore the pain he was feeling and focus on the task at hand, even as he thought back to the doctor's warnings about losing his arms permanently and what that truly meant. Single quote ellipsis. I knew that there would be consequences and mentally prepared for it. But still, I can feel it inside me. New Order. A narrative trope that I believe fits me most at this moment is how loss engenders strength. But the same can't be said for you, All For One stated while raising a hand towards Izuku and began concentrating a combination of quirks to enhance his air cannon, to not leave a single trace of the one who took everything from him. A pitiful child with nothing to lose in the first place. I doubt you have any last words worth listening to. If he only knew. Izuku lifted his head up from the ground to glare at All For One, the earth. All For One's eyes narrowed slightly at Deku's strange words, before dismissing it as he finished charging the air cannon in his left hands. I suppose it doesn't matter what your last words are. They as useless and have as much worth as you do. Nothing. Deku's green eyes flashed as he watched All For One release the devastating shockwave of air pressure at him. New order. All the earth within 5 meters of this spot will rise from the ground, and form a perfectly compressed wall 2 meters thick. What? The shock was evident of All For One's face as the dirt and grass all around Deku seemed to follow his exact command, and his view of the former One For All user was cut off by a large barrier mere seconds before his attack could make contact, the very earth itself somehow withstanding the air blast except for several large cracks. The realization that his attempt to kill Deku failing was coupled by the fury he already had as he watched the hero emerge from behind the barrier. How is that possible? Those words, your actions. How did you do that? Izuku looked at the wall he created for a few more seconds before turning to face All For One with a melancholy expression. One that was slowly replaced with an infuriating smile that reminded him of that of All Might and Nana Shimura, 2 previous wielders of the quirk he once coveted. Answer me. Over a year ago, when I first received One For All. All Might told me there was a difference between receiving something because you are lucky and something you are given because you are recognized. For a long time, despite his words, I had thought that I had been the former. I was a quirkless nobody that was given this amazing quirk that so happened to belong to my idol and the #1 hero. How much luckier can you get than that? Izuku's memories of that fateful morning were still as clear as the day he had been forced to eat All Might's hair received his quirk after 10 months of grueling training, but I did everything I could to make that power my own, to prove to myself that I was the latter. And just when I thought I would go back to being quirkless, it happens once again. What? Leftover embers of One For All. New order. The energy from the embers shall take physical form outside my body and harden to become my new arms. Izuku let out a painful shout as he could feel the residual power left behind by One For All follow his commands and focus on the bloody stumps that had been his biceps, green electricity and flames erupting from them before binding together until they resembled 2 working arms similar in shape to his original limbs. Taking a deep breath, Deku held out one of his glowing arms in a tight fist, his hardened gaze focused on All For One's masked face. Just like before, I was recognized by another and was given the power to finish this fight once and for all. That should be impossible. That quirk destroyed itself after that blasted woman ordered it to attack me from within. I watched it break apart with my own eye. But that sequence of activation requirements has too many similarities to just be a coincidence. So how did you manage to steal New Order from me when it was reduced to nothing? I didn't steal it. It was given to me. Deku replied while shifting his stance into a more combat-based one. Just because you have a powerful quirk doesn't mean you're the one always in control. Or did you forget that Shigaraki also had use of All For One as well? Several veins throbbed on the villain's temple upon hearing that brat Tenko. Somehow he managed out one last form of rebellion against me before I destroyed him. I don't know how he reconstructed a quirk when I am incapable of such a feat, but no matter, I've already dealt with New Order before. Its restrictions are known to me, and he's already used one of the 2 rules to make those arms of his. So, he only has the limit of 1 rule left. Here I come, All For One. Izuku yelled as he charged forward, reaching up to tap his shoulder with a glowing hand. Izuku Midoriya. New Order. Izuku Midoriya's physical abilities will be enhanced to a similar level to how his body was 15 minutes prior. Such foolishness. You may have gained Star and Stripes quirk, but obviously, you don't realize the limitations. The only reason you were so powerful earlier was because of all the extra quirks merged within One For All thanks to the previous users. Lifting up his arms, large bolts of black lightning shot out at incredible speeds towards the approaching green-haired hero. Even that blasted woman could not reach the levels that All Might was capable of, since it went beyond what she could balance out. You wasted your orders. Lightning. Reaching up with both hands in an almost unseeable speed, Deku intercepted the bolts with a tight grip. New order. Lightning will cover Izuku Midoriya's body without harming him. True to his orders, the black lightning shifted around and encircled his entire form from his head to the remains of his iron soles without hurting the hero in the slightest. But that wasn't the end of it, as Deku, much to All For One's shock, seemed to vanish from sight before reappearing upside down above him with one leg already descending. Florida smash. The next thing All For One knew, a powerful blow slammed into the top of his head, followed by the shock of his own lightning striking down and causing his body to seize up from the electricity hitting every inch of his muscles. But Deku wasn't done, as he spun his body around with the back of his elbows slamming into the side of the villain's face. Wyoming smash. Gah! All For One gritted his teeth behind the hand mask as he felt the force of the blow temporarily made his vision twist, before snapping his gaze at Deku's face with glowing eyes. Eye laser plus heavy payload plus scatter plus lock on. Blue beams of light fired out of the villain's eyes before spreading out in a burst of multiple slightly streams, causing Deku to backtrack back as fast as possible to avoid being hit, only for the attack to follow him no matter how he adjusted his movements or sharp be turned. I wouldn't bother trying to avoid them. Lock on is a very handy quirk that I had managed to get my hands on from a young girl several years. Those beams will continue to follow you until they hit. Hilariously, she wanted to be a pro heroine just like her favorite one, not knowing that disposable trash had such blood on her hand. Izuku's eyes narrowed in rage as the mention of Lady Nagant, the sight of her charred cracked from when All For One detonated that exploding quirk inside her body, still fresh in his mind. How do you like the lasers, by the way? The quirk came from a family member of the one I took naval laser from, though they weren't as willing. It was much more efficient and easier to use than naval laser, so I discarded that useless variant onto that classmate of yours. It gave me 3 pawns to manipulate and helped me to discard some trash from my inventory. Aoyama's teary eyes face as he was restrained alongside his family was another memory to flash through the green-haired teen's mind. But that rage Deku felt was put on hold as he increased his speed to avoid the beams trying to perform a pincer attack, only for them to curve just before they hit one another. It was just like the 5th user, Daigoro Banjo, had told him. Izuku was allowed to get angry at something, but he needed to control it and properly direct that anger into something more productive in battle. First things first, though. Spinning himself around, Deku clenched his energy-based hands while taking a deep breath. I've only seen her use this in a recording when she teamed up with Godzilla against Queen Ghidorah, but still. Air. New order. The air hardens into my form, but 100 times bigger. Fist bump to the earth. Meanwhile, in America, there's no doubt about it. That boy somehow managed to acquire Kathleen's quirk. A man with an elongated head, bushy whiskers, and large eyes watched through a large monitor that was broadcasting the final battle that was taking place in Japan, where they had already seen so much already taken place. He had lost count how many times it felt like his heart had come to a stop from watching All Might's battle against what he had understood to be a de-aging All For One with a battle armor he had commissioned himself, and how the former number 1 hero almost violently torn apart before he had been saved by 2 of his students. And now, he was watching this green-haired boy, who had been revealed to be All Might's successor and inheritor of the man's quirk, struggle and put his body weight past its limit to fight against Tamura Shigaraki. For a moment, it had seemed that something had happened between the two in a large clump of what appeared to be mutated fingers before they broke apart to reveal the damage the two had received from that interaction. The teenager had lost both his arms in a bloody mess and seemed to have lost the power he had wielded earlier while his opponent was still standing. Only for the very earth to come to Izuku Midoriya's defense, and reality seemed to bend to the boy's commands. Granted, there was no audio for him or anyone else in the world to hear what either were saying, but Timothy Agpar hadn't become an American military commander without learning some tricks, which included reading lips. He could easily pick up Midoriya's words. The actions, the wording, the way reality itself seemed to bend to his whims. All of it he had seen more times than he could recall through his work with the deceased Star and Stripe, and yet, the number of orders he's made has well gone over Cassie's limit. Agpar didn't have time to ponder this for long as his office door burst open and a man in a suit, one of his communications between him and the president, came rushing in. "What is it, sir? The president just issued an order." He wants us to send all available heroes to Japan right away." It took a few seconds for the commander to process these new orders, before a large smirk formed on his face. "Very well. Set up all communication to the agencies. I want our top 10 to prepare for the long-distance travel while our rescue heroes and every hero with a healing quirk are getting ready as well. Japan is going to need a lot of help with the aftermath and recovery." "Yes, sir. Right away." With those orders given, the man soon rushed out of the room as quickly as he entered, leaving Agpar by himself as he took a quick look back at the monitor in time to see Midoriya unleash a rush of punches at the incoming attacks, his unseeable giant avatar of air mimicking his movements and landing powerful punches that made contact with the beams of light and detonated each one long before it hit the teenager. At a first glance, the boy didn't seem have anything worthwhile about him, especially compared to the likes of All Might or Star and Stripe, but that just made him shine brighter upon seeing him in action. Inspiring others by pushing forward against the odds, giving hope to those that believe the situation to be hopeless. Do your best, young man. Perhaps the world was looking at the birth of a new symbol. All around the world. Whoa, did you see what that kid did? I thought he was done for after pushing himself so hard. He lost his freaking arms and kept trying to fight. Come on, Deku. Katsuma Shimano cheered next to his sister, Mahoro, as they stared at the TV broadcast with their father standing behind them. Look at him go. It's like he has a completely new quirk now. How many abilities does that hero have? But he's not using those black whips or flying anymore. Do you think that villain stole them? He's got that power, right? I think that kid took a power away at the same time. Those moves of his kinda look like Star and Stripe. They said that she died fighting that villain, so maybe he had taken her quirk, and this boy took it back. No way. Is that even possible? Damn it, just watching him go is infuriating. We are pro heroes too. We've got to send our support over to Japan. Whatever he's doing, keep it up, hero. You can do it, man. Rhodey Soul and his two siblings watched from their house in Athene, watching the hero continue to fight off this overpowered foe. Take him down. On the technological floating island, Melissa Shield had her hands clasped together as she watched Izuku clap his hands together and created a shockwave that sent his opponent flying. Do your best, Izuku. Underground bunker in Japan. Izuku. Inko Midoriya watched with tears falling down her cheeks as she watched her son reach out a glowing hand towards an incoming giant projectile All for One had fired at him, clenching his hand as if he was grabbing something, causing the attack to stop. Her son didn't stop there as he reared his arms back and acted like he was throwing something, to which the object was sent flying back towards the villain. Please, do your best and come back to me alive. It had nearly broken her when she had seen what had become of her son throughout the fight, breaking his own body using the quirk that had been given to him by All Might and using the 6 others inside of it to take on this villain that so many others, including the current #1 hero, Endeavor, could not defeat. Then she had seen her baby boy turn himself into a monstrous marionette using Black Whip to move his arms and legs to fight off the dozens of quirks coming at him. The sight of his collapsed body without his arms was too much for the green-haired woman, and she had nearly fainted at the exact moment that Shigaraki, All for One, whatever he called himself, poised to finish Izuku off. And then a miracle happened, and a wall of earth intercepted the attack. At first, she had thought that other heroes had come to join the fight, only for it to be revealed that it was all Izuku's doing. Her baby began to use abilities that she had never seen before, and this time it wasn't hurting him in the slightest. It even gave him a new pair of arms to fight with. She didn't care about where this new power came from. If it would bring her boy home, then that was all that mattered. Holy shit. For a moment, it almost looked like he was using a supped-up version of your quirk, Inko. Mitsuki Bakugo commented while wrapping a comforting arm around her best friend as they watched the shorter woman's son continue to fight. The taller woman had been somewhat quiet after seeing her own son, Katsuki, work with Izuku to save All Might's life before he took down the other All for One by himself, but Inko knew it was just because the woman was feeling relief that her brat was alive. Mitsuki's husband, Masaru, was standing a few feet from the two with a concerned look on his face as he watched the broadcast as well. He and his wife had known the boy since he was an infant, growing up alongside their son, and had seen Izuku as their pseudo-nephew. So seeing him in action now was incredible, but he's really pushing himself now. Izuku hasn't had a moment to catch his breath. You've got a quick trip to the front lines possible, right? Then let me go too. I want to help. I want to fight too. I may not be famous or well-known, but I'm a hero as well. Here, we've got some water and bandages." The three were pulled from their thoughts as they saw some of the people in the crowd start to get rowdy off to the side, where they could also see a bunch of people standing in front of Shota Aizawa, the pro-hero eraserhead and the homeroom teacher of Class 1A, who was standing on one leg in front of a black, swirling portal. Multiple clones of his fellow teacher, Ectoplasm, were taking offered medical supplies and water bottles from the civilians that wanted to help. What caught their attention the most was the familiar white-haired child standing next to Aizawa with her hand cupped together and holding something out to him. Eri, Inko called out in worry as she left Mitsuki's arms and ran over to the little girl, who turned her head to see the slightly overweight woman rush over. "Grandma." Eri didn't have a chance to say more as the woman wrapped her in a warm, but firm embrace. Inko pulled back to look down at the girl that her son had kept taking care of ever since he rescued her from a Yakuza family that had been doing horrible experiments to use her quirk to erase quirks completely. After that, she became a ward of UA High with the teachers and several students watching over her, Izuku included. She didn't know when it happened exactly, but apparently little Eri had been reading a book with one of the other students and started calling Izuku her papa, which in turn made her a grandmother. Inko barely remembered the water damage done to the building when she had been introduced to Eri during a video chat with Izuku, and she called her Grandma Inko, because, apparently, they had to call Mitsuki to head over to the apartment to check up on her after she passed out dehydration. After that, she made a point to head to school to help watch over Eri and give her lessons whenever the chance came up. Not that any of the pro-heroes could say no to the woman, especially after seeing how All Might himself was nervous around her, though heard the principal only broke out in a loud, 45-minute laugh that he had playing through the intercom. A lot of people had scared looks on their faces when she tried asking about it. But that was something for another time. Instead, Inko's attention instantly locked onto her forehead where Eri's horn, where her quirk's power was stockpiling, was broken and slightly bloody. The green-haired woman looked down at Eri's hands where a large piece of her horn rested. Eri, your horn. What on earth did you do, sweetie? I had some help with breaking this off, but I want to help Papa. Heavy tears started to build up in Eri's eyes as she looked up at her grandmother. He and everyone have done so much for me, making me smile every day. That's why I want to sing for them after this bad day is over. To make them smile too. Do you think I can be a hero too? I'm sorry, Izuku, I wish things were different. For so long, that one night has constantly repeated in my head so many times. About how much I failed him. All but crushing my son's dream because I didn't want him to get hurt or worse. Not having the strength, Inko hadn't been blind to how their relationship became strained after that, nor on how her son's life had become so difficult because his previous status as quirkless. She had told Izuku that she would support him and even made that homemade costume from his notes, but she still. Mr. Aizawa, do whatever you can to help my son. Of course. The eye-patch-wearing man nodded his head as he took the offered broken horn from Eri's outstretched hands. But as he grabbed the horn, Inko placed a hand on top of his. And there is something else I want you to do for me as well. Back with Izuku and All for One. I must admit, I am surprised how well you are handling that new quirk, especially with such a burden. All for One mockingly said as he stared at the painting Izuku, who had fallen to his knees after giving out yet another order to erase the air between them to extinguish the torrent of flames that All for One had unleashed. While he could not see it, All for One could sense the large avatar that Izuku had created had returned to normal air along with the vacuum pocket and electricity surrounding him. Izuku said nothing in return as he slowly lifted a leg, so he was only resting on one knee. I didn't realize the mental strength Cassie used when doing her hero work. She didn't just give orders based on her power meter, she also had to strengthen her mind since she was inserting her will into whatever she used her quirk on, and this new enhanced version has a much bigger strain. I was able to hold out because it was like using the quirks of the previous users at the same time, but I don't have the time to get used to it. However, I can see it now. The new limits of your capabilities. Most of your new order remains the same, though the only changes are that your number of orders has increased to 5 and the meter of its limitations is slightly higher. But even with that, you still aren't close to the level that Kathleen Bate had reached with her decades of experience with it, and then there's the misdirection you pulled with those arms of yours. The demon lords, eyes narrowed in satisfaction as he noticed Izuku's body briefly flinch at the comment. It was ingenious to use the embers left by One for All to create workable arms for you to fight with, but they are still just limbs of energy and not your actual body. You've been pretending to activate New Order when your hands have touched them, but in truth, you've been using your entire body. Not many realize that being able to touch something isn't limited to just your hands, and since most only ever saw Star and Stripe use her hands to activate her quirk, it made sense for people to assume it was a hand contact requirement. Your head, torso, legs, feet, even your very skin. Each part of your body is in contact with the thing that you are setting a rule on. You were taking such a risk, weren't you? Damn, he figured that out as well. Izuku thought back to his actions in controlling the lightning that All for One had tried to hit him with earlier. If it hadn't been for his enhanced reactions and timing, the electricity would have reached his heart and caused major damage seconds after it started to spread across his body. You have done well, but we both know that this battle has reached its conclusion. All for One stated as he raised his arm up, each of his fingers activating a different quirk of different types including fire twisters, his rivet stab, his finger bone emerging from the skin with a bone cannon, bladed fingernail launchers, and a large mouth coming out of the final finger. Now that I know that you only have 5 rules to use, and are already using 2 of them, all I must do is give you more challenges than you can handle. I won't bother in trying to take New Order since you would just repeat what that woman did and sabotage the quirk once again, so I will just destroy the both of you and continue with my plans. I won't let you win. New Order. Several white bindings encircled All for One's arm and pulled it back, catching both him and Izuku by surprise as they turned to see a figure in the air behind the villain with the white strips coming out of their elbow. The figure turned out to be Izuku's classmate, Hanta Siro aka Cellophane, who was grinning even with the injuries present on his body and secured his quirk, tape, around All for One to prevent him from attacking. Don't worry, Midoriya, we're here to help. So weak and trivial. I was so focused on Midoriya that I didn't pick up the lesser warnings. Ripping off the tape wrapped around his superior strength, All for One barely had time to turn his head as 2 others came from the side and attacked him. The next thing he knew, a large bulky tail and a strong fist slammed into his torso. Tornado tail dance, sugar knuckle. Watching his classmates knock All for One flying back with their combined strike, Izuku was almost at a loss for words. You're all safe. Siro, Ojiro, Sato. But how did you get here? Sorry to keep you waiting, Midoriya. Izuku snapped his head back to see Aizawa hopping out of a swirling portal, one of many that formed throughout the battlefield as pro-heroes that had been fighting in the various locations they had set up were coming through one by one. It took a few minutes, but we managed to resolve every other battle besides this one. Kirishima, also known as Red Riot, let out a chuckle as he noticed more of his classmates come out of the portals near Midoriya. Funny bumpin' into all of you guys here. Right back at you. Mezzo Shoji, Tenkakole, let out a grunt as his maskless face fully exited the warp gate. Anima, another classmate by the name of Koji Koda, stood next to Shoji with a glare on his face. Communication from the police went around asking if there was anyone who could still fight. As long as I'm still conscious, I'll do whatever it takes. Tsuyu Asui, the hero called Froppy, nodded in agreement as she landed nearby. We heard that Aizawa-sensei managed to win over Kurogiri. Mina Ishido, otherwise known as the acid-using hero Pinky, stumbled a little but kept her form standing tall. Chargebolt, Denki Kaminari, looked like he was close to going over his quirk's limit but was holding up 2 thumbs up. When we saw our pal busting his butt to keep on fighting, how could we possibly not take action and help? Momo Yayorozu, the hero dubbed Creata, finished as she came to a stop next to Kaminari. Everyone, Izuku muttered to himself as he saw more of his classmates, friends that were injured and had barely received proper treatment, continue to arrive via Warp Gate along with other hero students and pro-heroes. So, you've all come to have your quirks stolen, have you? All for One raised his hand at the slowly growing number of heroes forming, showing off the hole in his hand that his quirk's true abilities resided. I doubt this was the work of that copycat student from UA's Class 1B, based on the data his time limit should have run out. Which means, Kurogiri has. Sensei, what are you? Don't move around so much. Aizawa ordered as he knelt to Izuku's level, staring down at the glowing arms with narrow eyes. Good improvisation, even though I don't know how you did it. How long has it been since you lost your original arms? I don't know how long it was while we were in that subconscious space, but it's been about 5 or 6 minutes since I returned. Izuku answered while keeping his focus locked on All For One, his mind racing in thought now that he had the chance to think. He was right about my level of experience not being on Cassie's level, but there is another reason I wasn't using some of the rules she implemented in the past. I saw her memory of her fight against Shigaraki when she tried to use a rule on him. It didn't work because she had focused on Tamura Shigaraki and didn't know about the two of them slowly merging consciousnesses, which meant that her perception and theirs were not matched up for it to work. When Izuku had arrived at the battlefield and started fighting Shigaraki, All For One, the latter had boasted about how the two were now perfectly fused together, only for that to fail because Shigaraki overthrew his former mentor and completely swallowed him up. There had been nothing left of All For One, and even if there had been, the small bit that remained should have been destroyed when Izuku had smashed Tenko's spirit. That didn't seem to be the case as All For One somehow managed to return, but something did not seem right about whatever method he used. Which had brought about Izuku's biggest inquiry and issue with using New Order on All For One up to this point. Was this person before them still All For One? Izuku was pulled out of his thoughts as he felt something poke against his shoulder, causing him to turn to see Aizawa pressing a familiar-looking horn against his body. His eyes widened as he recognized the broken horn and turned to his homeroom teacher, who let out a breath. It might be a long shot since not a lot of energy has stockpiled into it, but she wanted to help you. So, you can't die until you've heard your daughter singing. Looking down at his body, the green-haired teen saw the glow from Aries' rewind quirk coating his body and slowly reversing the damage dealt to his body. He quickly dismissed the rule, creating his pseudo-arms as he felt his limbs slowly start to reform. Quote ellipsis. I've also got a message for you, from your mother. Blinking a few times at that, Izuku could already feel tears building up in his eyes already from the thought of Eri potentially harming herself to help him and was wondering what his mother had to say. She told me to tell you this, you can be a hero. In fact, I know you'll be one that will surpass even All Might. Just make sure that you promise to work hard and come home to us alive. The tears started falling down Izuku's face at those words. It had taken 13 years, but his mother's words made him just as happy as when All Might said something similar the day they met 2 years ago. Both his mother and daughter were supporting him and wanted him to make it back alive, and everyone else had come to help finish this fight as well. He had to respond to those feelings in kind. Taking a deep breath, Midoriya looked down at the slow process of time being reversed on his arms. All right, if there isn't enough stockpiled into the horn, I'll just give it more. Rewind quirk, one for all embers. New Order, conjoined. A small portion of the ember will supply Rewind with enough power to restore Izuku Midoriya's body to how it was 20 minutes ago. Aizawa watched in shock as the green energy from earlier mixed in with the golden aura of Aries' quirk, actually speeding up the process and returning Izuku back to how he was before the fighting began. Did you just say, New Order? But that's impossible. None of the quirks in One for All should have anything like that, and that green aura. I don't have One for All anymore, I gave it up. Izuku revealed as he made it back to his feet, already feeling most of the damage he had gotten from the earlier fight being erased. Not just it, all of the other quirks are gone too. But in its place, I got something else to help me fight. The embers that took root inside me like they did All Might, and the New Order quirk that I traded in its place. That's unbelievable, you have both inside of you? Aizawa couldn't believe what he was hearing. Even with the actual first quirk gone and the remaining energy only temporary, at this moment his student had the power of two number 1 heroes dwelling within him. Feeling his arms being fully restored and the wound on his face close up, clenched his hands into fists. All For One isn't done with me yet. I've still got those embers and I will finish this. Seeing the resolve in Izuku's eyes, Aizawa knew there was no stopping his student, and handed over a large shirt with All Might's face on it. Midoriya, take this, it's from the refugees. They handed over a lot of medicine and bandages too, but it looks like you don't need it. It's the Series 5, one-size shirt from the men's non-no brand. Izuku was blown away at the rare merchandise he was given before sliding the t-shirt over his head. Turning his attention back to the villain standing across from the large group of heroes surrounding him, Izuku began making his way to the front of the crowd. Brief flashback. Final pieces? What are they? Izuku asked as he looked up at the taller woman while slightly tilting his head to the side. The first one is about your hero name. From what I heard in reports, you went with the name Deku, right? Kathleen asked while crossing her arms, a small frown on her face. From what I know, that word translates to useless, good for nothing, or a wooden doll. So, I wanted to ask why you decided on that name specifically. Well, that's because I wanted to change the meaning of that name. It was something bullies used to call me all the time because I was quirkless and weak, and honestly, I hated it for so long. Izuku explained before the face of one of his best friends, Ochako Uraraka. Smiling face flashed through his mind. But a close friend of mine showed me that it could be represented in a different way, like saying, I can do it. Is that so? I suppose I can understand the meaning behind it. But if you want my suggestion, I think you should change it a little bit. Holding up her hand to stop the teen from interrupting her, the former #1 heroine continued, I'm not saying that you can't hold on to the meaning. However, if you want to be known as the hero that broadcasts that meaning, go with the actual word instead. From what I can put together, Deku was the name you wanted when you were starting to solidify what kind of hero you wanted to be and followed after All Might. But with this new name, you can actually be your own hero and really match up to that name's meaning. Bringing hope for a better future. Flashback finished. All for one. Izuku's voice echoed throughout the battlefield as his enemy and allies turned their attention towards the teen, who was positioning himself just inches ahead of the crowd with an arm raised high. You said that I was somebody worthless with nothing to lose, but that is far from the truth. I am the one for all hero, Dekiru. This story of yours will end after 200 long years will finally come to an end, and do you know why? Clenching his raised hand into a fist, Izuku brought it down to point it at the angered villain with all of the other pro-heroes positioned behind him. Izuku, wow. I thought it was insane how the battle was going before with the speed and those black tentacle things. But this is just taking it to the next level. It's almost like watching Star and Stripe in action again. A voice spoke up from next to the man watching the battle happening in Japan on a tablet screen. The man looked over to see a younger hero in his mid-20s donning a blue full bodysuit with silver armored gear and a purple visor over his eyes. The costume came with a hoodie that he currently had over his head as he leaned over the man's shoulder. It's crazy to think that high schooler is doing so much against that Shigaraki guy. Some people are posting that he must have stolen New Order from that thieving quirk somehow. And those energy arms look so awesome. Yeah, come on, Skycrawler. I think that's enough bugging the poor guy for now. The two men looked up to see another hero approach them. He was very tall, and his looks screamed a stereotypical American jock look with a muscular physique, blonde hair that was styled in a swept-back mohawk and blue eyes that were currently hidden behind a dark blue-tinted visor that was similar in design to Skycrawler. He was wearing his own hero costume of a blue and black bodysuit that was cut off at the knees and his upper arms, silver shoulder pads and knee pads, and a red cape. I apologize for my sidekick, Hisashi-san. Oh, it's fine. Not that often the poor guy gets to talk to a fellow Japanese person instead of struggling with his English. Hisashi Midoriya commented with a reassuring wave of his free hand. The man was in his early 40s with a lean, yet muscular build that was more on the modest side compared to the likes of All Might's buff form or Endeavor, though he still possessed the similar high as the two heroes from Japan. His usual fluffy black hair was slicked back, which he learned to do after years of practice, bright green eyes with scale-like patterns under them and a thin chin strap of scruffy beard, and was wearing a dark gray leisure suit over a green shirt. I'm the one who should be thanking you all for allowing me to accompany you on the mission to Japan. I really appreciate it. Think nothing of it. It's the least we could do after you helped us out with that incident with number 6 and getting Koichi properly situated as Captain Celebrity's sidekick. A woman's voice called out as she poked her head out from behind the blonde hero, brushing a lock of her jet black hair behind her ear. Having the World Hero Association's assistance in all the legal issues the Captain Celebrity Corporation had to deal with after the Naruhata lockdown. Even as the general manager, I was almost overwhelmed by the red tape and paperwork. And I had to deal with so much of it before then because of this guy. Captain Celebrities wilted a little at the jab at him. Come on, Makoto. I've gotten a lot better in the past few years, haven't I? Even my wife says I'm a lot better than how I used to be, and my son thinks I'm awesome. Well, Pamela hasn't been complaining about you as much when we've chatted. I'll give you that. It's still terrifying that you talk to my wife behind my back. Koichi Himawari, also known as Skycrawler, a former vigilante from Japan turned American sidekick, weakly chuckled at the two banter. Never underestimate Makoto Tsukachi, or any woman for that matter. My own wife can be quite intimidating when she wants to be. A bead of sweat fell down the side of Hisashi's face as he said that, having personal experience of his wife being angry at him despite how soft and huggable his sweet green koala could be. From what my son told me, she even managed to make All Might tremble after the incident with the UA training camp incident. Seriously? Damn, that's some woman you married. Hold on, so, this kid's your son? No wonder you look so much alike. Just switch out his hair color and making him a little older. Koichi blinked in surprise as he looked up from his own video feed on his phone, before looking down at the footage of the other heroes slowly joining Izuku in the final battle. Quote ellipsis. No way. Is he regrowing his actual arms? What? How's that possible? Let me see. I've heard a little about this kid from my brother, Naomasa. A small smile formed on Hisashi's face as he watched his son hold one of his restored arms in the air, shouting out to the villain from across the battlefield his hero name and determination to win. It had only been recently that the order had been passed throughout the World Hero Association and the countries watching the decisive battle in Japan to send available pro-heroes and resources to assist dealing with the remaining villains and rebuilding, and yet all of the government airfields were being flooded by those that wanted to help. Ever since the confrontation with the Paranormal Liberation Front and the massive prison breaks caused by All for One and his Nomus, Hisashi had worried about his wife and son since travel to and from Japan had been halted, which prevented him from returning home. He didn't have the highest rank as an agent in the WA, but that didn't mean what he did was any less important with helping the association as a representative of Japan with dealing with threats all around the world. Working with top-rank heroes from other countries and continents was an incredible honor, plus it made his son happy whenever he'd send rare hero merchandise or autographs, even though his busy schedule meant he couldn't return home as often as he wanted. Ever since the beginning of the year, there had been so much that he had unfortunately missed during Izuku's admission to one of the greatest hero schools in the world. Finding out that his son had somehow awakened a quirk at the age of 15, which in his line of work made it impossible for him to buy Izuku's story about it being a late bloomer situation, was number 2 on his list. Not only was his son a bad liar, but Hisashi had dealt with so many unique cases that he knew there was more to what he was being told. In the end, he decided to silently accept it to not get in the way of his son's dream and would shelve that conversation for later. After that, he would hear stories of Izuku's class having to deal with the League of Villains on numerous occasions, seeing him perform in the sports festival and so much more. Somehow, Hisashi managed to become a grandpa to a 7-year-old girl. His female co-workers gushed when he showed off a Christmas photo of Izuku and Eri dressed up in Santa Claus outfits. Yet, one of the best and scariest moments before this whole war started was when the World Hero Association and heroes had to deal with Humorize. On the one hand, he got to work together with his son briefly before Endeavor's group had to go to Atheon, and it was because of Izuku and his friends that they managed to put a stop to the terrorist threat. On the other, his son had been falsely accused of mass murder by some corrupt cops working with the terrorists. Sure, it all resolved in the end, but can you even imagine how his conversations with Inko went throughout that entire incident? Not pleasant at all. There was also the weird, suspicious looks that one of his son's friends, Shoto Todoroki, kept sending his way almost the entire time he had interacted with the group. Katsuki was the same as always though, too much like Mitsuki back in high school. Still a bit of a brat, but it seemed that a lot of his ego had cooled down since he last saw him. Tears of pride filled Hisashi's eyes as the visage of his son was replaced by his child form, wearing his old All Might onesie and pretending to save the civilian, Inko, from the terrifying villain, Hisashi. The memory quickly returned to Izuku and the other heroes as they charged Shigaraki, all for one. Izuku, I am so proud of the man you've become. I always knew you possessed the heart and potential to become an amazing hero, and now, the entire world knows it too. Mount Fuji. Again, and again, and again, and again. All for One's mind roared in as he glared at the green-haired teen standing in front of the wounded heroes that had come as reinforcements. The image of the boy, who just proclaimed his hero name to be Dekiru, was replaced with the glare that his brother and first holder of One for All, Yoichi, used to give him before his death. Then his visage was replaced by Kudo, and then Bruce, then Hikage, then Daigoro, then En, then Nana, then All Might. Each and every one of them staring back at All for One with the exact same infuriating look of defiance. Just how many times must I deal with such irritations? It all started with his younger brother's constant desire to get in his way ever since they were children growing up on the streets, pointlessly trying to use his weak and sickly body to stop him from using his quirk for anything and everything he wanted. All for One didn't even need to use any of the quirks he stole. A swift kick to Yoichi's head was enough punishment for throwing rocks at him. The younger Shigaraki brother may have been All for One's first possession, but even scuffed belongings were still valuable on a personal level. He thought that by locking Yoichi away and even giving him a quirk after being believed to be powerless that eventually his younger brother would obey him, and then Kudo formed his feudal resistance and tried to fight back against him. At first, All for One saw the so-called resistance and its members were insignificant pebbles that he could leave to his subordinates. There was no need to dirty his hands with the fools that thought they could cause him any sort of grievance, let alone defeat him. But then Kudo crossed the line. That man, the one that Izuku Midoriya now tied with and All for One's hated for someone even more than All Might, had made one fatal mistake. Kudo took away what was his, one simple, foolish action that started all of this. But all of it is meaningless to me now. All for One thought to himself as his body slowly lifted into the air. My original body reverted away into nothingness thanks to his use of that rewind quirk dosage that the doctor made for him. I honestly should have shattered along with Tamura since I became an integral part of him. But the moment I heard the sounds of Yoichi breaking into nothing along with the rest of One for All, it was as if all the color in my world faded away. Izuku glared hard at the villain hovering a small distance away from the large formation of heroes. I need to get close. I don't know how to explain it, but both the Embers and New Order are telling me that I need to make contact with All for One's body to finish this. Gar-ki? The hero student's eyes widened in shock. It was broken and somewhat muffled, but he clearly heard a voice just now. A familiar one that shouldn't be possible. Unless. Meanwhile, back in the pack of heroes, Present Mike watched as the last of the reinforcements emerged from the warp gates. Thanks for the help, Shirakumo. Alright folks, all abled bodies listen up. You heard Dekiru's words. This is a major turning point for us. Our last big job to end this war. My obsession, the one thing I desired more than anything else. Gone, only a gaping void of loss remains now, so deep that not even the death blow you attempted succeeded. Spikes began to emerge from All for One's shoulders while the rest of his arms mutated and grew monstrously large as his flesh turned into weapons and other types of offensive quirks the man had in his arsenal. One of his legs transformed and opened up in a thorny wrap as a black orb formed underneath what used to be his foot. Izuku Midoriya. No, Dekiru. I've come to realize that it's tragedy that engenders true strength. Wouldn't you agree? The green-haired teen wasn't the one to respond to the Demon Lord's statement, as Cellophane took a step forward and patted his classmate on the shoulder. I dunno about that. My life has been pretty ordinary compared to some people out there, not really full of those wild highs or tragic lows. Biggest thing pushing me forward were typical school stuff of not wanting to fare my next practical and such. Taking off into a dash towards All for One, Zero continued to speak out as he saw two warp gates form on either side of the villain. But the same can't be said for some of my friends though, especially one that used to look so empty and mentally exhausted. Miserable, tragic crap like that ain't something anyone should have to endure. Emerging from his gate with his left arm ablaze, Shoto didn't even exchange a glance with his father, Endeavor, who exited out from the gate on the opposite side of All for One with his own flames covering his remaining arm. A mild stabbing sensation from the stolen danger sense throbbed in the villain's head, though the sudden pincer attack didn't seem to bother All for One in the slightest. Flash fire. Fist. Both father and son unleashed their flame attacks in unison at All for One, who used his levitation quirk in conjunction with a ring repulsion quirk, the very one he originally stole from Tenko when he was a newborn, to move above the explosion caused by colliding flames. It seems that danger sense will only be a useless annoyance in this fight. Tell me if you recognize this, Endeavor? Dark Ball plus Pyro Absorption plus Kinetic Booster 4x. Everyone watched as the black ball under All for One's foot gained a purple outline as it began to descend into the flames and to the shock of many, began to absorb all of the fire into itself and grew in size. The flame hero's eyes narrowed at this, never taking his gaze off the sphere even as Zero's tape wrapped around his torso and pulled him away along with his son. This is just like with that four-eyed Nomu I faced back in Hosu. He's absorbing the flames and planning on releasing it in one powerful burst, using that ball as a catalyst so the injuries don't go back to him. You cut-rate heroes are mere afterthoughts compared to All Might and Dekiru? All wounded and desperate to achieve some forlorn glimmer of hope. I don't even pity or annoyance, only nothing. All for One stated as several of the tendrils coming out of his right arm twisted together behind the black sphere and began to bulge, just as you were about to become. Air cannon. A shockwave of air pressure erupted from the tendril bunch and blasted into the dark ball, shattering the dark casing and collided with the flames inside. The already enhanced fire grew bigger and stronger as the air pressure turned the shockwave into a large torrent of flames that were heading straight for the main collection of heroes while others were already on the move to attack the villain from the sides. Already going for a powerful ranged attack, huh? Looks like All Might's claim was right on the money. All for One's influence is making Shigaraki starts off his fights the same way. Aizawa's eyes then widened in shock as his problem child of a student leap into the air with a hand stretched out. Midoriya. Let's see how you like it. Fire. New order. The fire will condense into a ball and harmlessly float over my left hand. As soon as the words escaped Dekiru's lips, the incoming flames from All for One's enhanced counter-fire created from Endeavor and Shoto's flash-fire fists suddenly began to move on their own into a vortex that began to shrink until it became a glowing ball of yellow-white flames hovering over Izuku's left hand. New order really is amazing. Zero. Get them out of the way. Already done. The tape quirk user shouted back as he finished pulling the father and son, who were still severely burnt and exhausted from their fight with Dabi, out of the line of attack. Midoriya? Shoto thought to himself in disbelief as he watched his friend manipulate the fire that All for One had turned against them. The two-toned teenager had gotten a rough briefing of what happened to his best friend, but seeing him in action was another story. Endeavor gritted his teeth through the pain as he watched one of the students that did a work study under him. I managed to hear some of the chatter though communications. Deku no, Dekiru, somehow gained the power of Star and Stripe. With a mind like his, this could be the lucky break we needed. Use everything at your disposal, make our flames your own if that's what it takes to bring this villain down. Rearing his right arm back, Izuku clenched his hand into a fist as he called out his next order. New order, revision. The sphere of fire that doesn't harm me will recoil from impact with my fist and release in a straight torrent in front of me. Reminds me of when I hoped to get a fire quirk like Dad. A bit of a mix of Endeavor and Dynamite's attacks, but Hawaii Smash. Striking the back of the fire sphere, all of the condensed and hotter fire released from the other side in a concentrated blast that spread out wider the farther it reached. The attack collided with an enormous collection of All for One's nearby rivet spiral spears that were aiming for a separate group of heroes that were charging from the side, the intense heat vaporizing the black spears before they could hit the heroine sidekick Burnin and her group. Not bad, kid, really put some heat on that one. Burnin shouted with an impressed grin on her face before grabbing two chunks of her blazing hair and manipulated them into becoming lances in her hands. Alright, you lot. Dekiru was a part of our agency not too long ago, so it'd look bad if his senpais slacked off. Divert his attacks. Right. The other members of the flaming sidekickers roared in agreement as they followed the copper flame green-haired woman in getting closer to All for One. Creating more of his tendrils and spears, All for One fueled more of his various offensive and enhancement quirks through them as the large mob of heroes charged forward. But even as the pro-heroes and hero students struggled to fight off his attacks, the Demon Lord kept his focus on Dekiru, who started to run towards him with a look of determination. Even now, Danger sensed prioritizing Izuku Midoriya and his new order as the biggest threat. While barely registering any of these weak afterthoughts, All for One was quickly pulled from of his thoughts, both figuratively and very literally, as extraordinarily powerful force suddenly started pulling him from behind. The man snapped his head around to see the pro-heroine 13 riding on the back of her fellow teacher and pro-hero, Hound Dog, with all of the fingertip caps on her gloves open. Black hole. The helmetless woman shouted as she kept her quirks suction trained on All for One, preventing the man from attacking the incoming heroes. But 13 wasn't alone as the fleshy quirk of the hero student. She Cross temporarily held the villain in place long enough for another pro-hero, Gang Orca, to get close enough to unleash a powerful hypersonic attack. Nothing but dust to sweep away. All for One commented as he shook off the sonic attack before letting his tendrils run wild, each one tearing into the very earth before the hero's feet and sending a few flying. Holy crap, just how fast and strong is this guy? Dealing with just one of his attacks is taking dozens of us to hold him off. I knew he'd be insane to fight, but we're not even close to evening the field. Don't let him split us up. Itsuka Kendo, student of UA's Class 1B known as Battle Fist, exclaimed as she used her enlarged fist to punch away an incoming spear. Fight back as a cohesive unit. If it takes a bunch of us to divert even one attack, then make it happen together. Smash! Destroying one of the airborne boulders descending upon some of the heroes with a powerful tornado kick. Izuku landed nearby with his feet skidding across the ground. Everyone, I know it is asking a lot, but please, lend me your strength. But of course, we'd better get running then. A familiar French accent spoke up just as a hand grabbed onto Dekiru's, making the green-haired teen turn to see Aoyama looking straight ahead towards All for One. The man responsible for his family's anguish. Aoyama, we'll need your strength to finish this as much as you need us. The very reason we all came was to fight by your side. Briefly looking down at his classmate's hand pulling at him to start running, Izuku briefly thought back to that moment after they found out that Aoyama was All for One's spy and how he offered his hand out to him. But despite the lump slowly building in his throat, the former One for All user swallowed it down. Feeling the strong tug of Aoyama lightly tossing him forward, Dekiru glanced back to see that Can't Stop Twinkling sent him off with an encouraging smile even as All for One's rivet spears tore through the ground underneath him before going full charge towards the villain. Now wasn't the time for tears. Meanwhile, a ways back, Aizawa snapped his head back to look at where his friend turned Nomu, Kurogiri, was standing. Shiraku? Eraserhead couldn't finish his orders as he watched as his former friend's body distort and actually begin to physically melt. It seemed that Kurogiri, Shirakumo, had pushed his body too far. The man's teeth grinded hard to the point that a few molars nearly cracked before turning his head back towards the battlefield with a hand on his earpiece. Carve a path. Lead one straight to Shigaraki for Dekiru. My Omnifactor unleash. Dozens of quirk and nearby rivet spears under All for One's control began to tangle and merge together in a monstrous barrel rifle over his shoulder. Unlike how my original body seemed to be emotional during his battle with Katsuki Bakugo, the true power behind it not the result of me giving into base emotions. The augmentation before you is what happened when I exercised control and authority over my myriad of quirks. Can your feeble minds understand what I mean by that? Every hero watched as a crackling ball of energy started forming on at the very end of the makeshift cannon, cracking with black lightning while the barrel was glowing ominously as the power inside continued to build. But that wasn't all, as many of the spikes taking form on All for One's shape-shifting body twisted until they were pointing down at the approaching Izuku and the heroes nearby, along with other types of projectile and emitter quirks. You may have a culmination of heroes on your side, but assuming that means you have me outnumbered is foolhardy. With his cannon pointed straight at Dekiru, All for One barely flinched as the force from the massive laser's blast destroyed the tendrils and transformations quirks used to create it. The recoil was of little consequence to him as long as he had hyper-regeneration. Shit, this is just like what we saw in Kamino with All for One's battle with All Might. Combining quirks like this is too insane. TCH. Izuku reared a fist back, fully prepared to launch a shockwave punch with the embers inside of him, only to be caught by surprise as a girl with long, messy, wavy chartreuse hair with pink specks in it jumped in front of the laser. She didn't appear to be wearing much besides some gloves and boots and a torn black jacket that barely reached her thighs. Get out of the wa. The green-haired teen didn't get a chance to finish his statement as the girl brought up her hands to the incoming laser and, to Izuku's surprise, managed to manipulate the laser and cause it to bend away from its initial trajectory. Despite what close she had been mostly torn to shreds by the attack and the light burn on her cheek, The girl appeared to be unharmed by it and actually flashed Izuku a large grin and determination in her big round eyes that were teal on the outside with a yellow interior. Got laser-ish stuff coming your way? Invisible girl is your gal. The beautiful girl called out to the group below before turning her attention back to All for One and put all of her energy into bending the powerful laser in her control even more. Hagakure? Izuku replied in shock as he managed to get a good look at his classmate, whose body appeared to be glitching as she was pressed up against the laser and her invisibility quirk no longer hiding her body. But his surprise didn't end there as he caught sight of two more of his classmates nearby with an electromagnetic railgun that Krieta had created with her quirk connected to Chargebolt to use his electrical quirk as a battery. Yaoyorozu, Kaminari, ready to fire, Yaoyorozu shouted to the blonde hero student. Despite feeling his brain already starting to short-circuit for a while now, Kaminari only smirked as he summoned even more of his electricity to power the weapon. Yai! The sound of the electromagnetic railgun rang through the air as it fired a powerful shot at All for One as Hagakure finished spinning the powerful laser blast around and released control of it, changing its trajectory fully to hit the very man that fired it. Raising a hand towards the incoming counterattacks, All for One scoffed as he channeled a few defensive quirks into his arm. Insolent brats. I really hope this works. Deku called out as he leapt into the air with his enhanced speed and landed near the tip of the laser attack being redirected back at All for One. Laser. New order. From now on, lasers will not harm my body and be surfable. With his feet firmly placed on the laser, Deku leaned forward as he rode on it all the way towards the villain. Krieta and Chargebolt's railgun seemed to have more power behind it than normal as the projectile actually passed the laser and was tearing through any of All for One's other incoming attack that got near it. You're not getting away. Narrowing his eyes as the railgun bullet slammed into his hand and taking a good chunk of his palm, All for One concentrated more of his attack onto Izuku as he approached. Clever. It seems your mind isn't limited by imagination in how to use New Order. I suppose that is one thing you have more than Star and Stripe, Deku. But can you protect them like All Might did? TCH. Just watch me. Before Deku could finish his retort, all of the incoming spears and other offensive quirks that were heading towards the former OFA user were destroyed or knocked away by the combined effort of Izuku's classmates from both Class 1A and 1B. Though it wasn't enough to stop some of the thicker tendrils from colliding from the laser, Deku was riding on and halting its advancement, causing him to cancel out his order as a result to keep his slots open. Who says he's got to focus on protecting us? Don't worry about us, man. You just save your strength. It can actually hurt him. We might not know each other well, but let us endure these attacks for you. Shiozaki's right. Let us tank these while you finish that guy off. Feeling two different sensations wrapped around his torso as he felt his body slowly start to descend, Izuku followed them upward to see two more of his classmates, Tentacle and Froppy, using their dupli arms and tongue respectively to pull him upward with a lot of force. While we can't weave through these brutal attacks like you, Tentacle started to say, we can still help you get a little closer in our own way. Froppy finished as she and her fellow hero student put all of their strength into throwing Deku forward. Thanks, Shoji. You too, Sue. About time you finally said it right, Kiro. Froppy thought to herself as she leapt off the tendril she was on as Spike shot out of it. Landing with a crouch, Izuku took in a deep breath as he took off running once again. Briefly stopping as a large stone whip was swinging towards him, only for Pinky, Red Riot, and a skinny fat Gum to intercept it and hold it off with all their strength. Show some guts. Red Riot's body seemed to struggle as it repeatedly shifted between his hardening quirk in its base form and his unbreakable form. And yet he continued to push back against the stone attack. You got this, dude. The red-haired hero student wasn't the only one who was visibly having difficulties with their quirk. The left side of Pinky's body no longer possessing its pink color for a fair tone, and sclera of her left eye lost some of its black color, reflecting how dehydrated she had become even as she summoned more acid. Get it done. Don't worry, I will. Blood, new order. The blood inside my body will pump and flow throughout my body at a faster rate. Izuku roared as the order took effect, channeled more power and became a blur as maneuvered through the attacks, his mind racing as he continued to run while his allies did their best to counter or intercept anything that tried to get close to him. I can't keep this order up for long. It's similar to blood doping and will increase my speed and agility for a little while, but the consequences will be similar what I went through with gearshift. But now I'm starting to feel it as I'm getting closer. The embers inside me are resonating with the actual quirk inside him. Izuku wasn't the only one with thoughts racing through his head. All for One was starting to struggle internally as he watched so many heroes continue to struggle against him despite his power. Why? Why do they refuse to lie down and die? These future carcasses should know that their actions are amounting to nothing, wasting so much strength in their previous skirmishes. And yet their eyes. Finding himself watching helplessly. Giving your power to this worthless trash was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. This young man possessed an unyielding will to protect others and give it everything he has to overcome challenges presented against him. All for One's eyes widened slightly as his previous words when Tamura tried to steal One for All echoed through his mind. So that's what my little brother meant. Compared to All Might, you don't have the overwhelming presence proclaiming that you can handle everything on your own. You may have power once again, but you clearly struggle with your entire being to achieve your goals, and that in turn spurs others to do the same. With a powerful leap off of an elastic platform of air created by gentle criminal, Izuku leapt towards All for One with an arm reared back. All the while unknowing of the words of encouragement people both on the battlefield and watching through whatever visuals they had available. Throughout all of Japan, do your utmost, boy. Keep going, hero. We believe in you. Do your best. You can do this. Dekiru. Get it done. Don't stop fighting. Take him down. You've got this. This is your chance, kid. I know you can. Dekiru. Gran Torino weakly said from his hospital bed, thankful that he got audio to hear his final student proclaim himself to the world. Do your best. Uravati whispered as she stared at the small screen Pixie Bob was holding out for her as they rode the helicopter to the hospital. Lady Nagant refused to take her eyes off the screen that the pro-hero, Rocklock, was facing in her direction, even as a nurse worked on restitching the wounds she had aggravated in her attempt to provide Dekiru support earlier. Take that bastard down. Quote, I know you can win. Kota shouted with tears in his eyes. Several feet away from the boy, Ipin Jose had her hands clasped together in front of her face as she watched image of the young hero that saved her rush towards the villain. Don't give up. You can do it. Papa, Izuku. Do your best. Eri and Inko shouted together with tears in their eyes as they watched Dekiru get closer to the villain. Win this, son. Hisashi stated as the aircraft he was on took off into the air, several pro-heroes watching over his shoulder with looks of encouragement on their faces too. Rooftop of destroyed building in Edo City. I thought our ejector seats were disabled, but here we are. Ethan Drive, one of the fighter pilots that came from America with Star and Stripe, spoke up as he removed some of the nearby rubble while his teammates were giving first aid to the incredible injured man lying on his back. I take it that was because of you, All Might? Japan's former #1 hero, also known as Toshinori Yagi, took in a deep breath as he felt one of the men work on securing his demolished right arm, but the damage done to him by the original All for One would need to be treated at a real hospital. Quote ellipsis. Those kids are hoping for an absolute victory. So, the least I could do was keep our losses to a minimum if possible. Coming from you? That's rich. The amused smirk on Ethan's face turned melancholy as he turned his head to look at one of the monitors they managed to salvage from a destroyed X-66, which luckily allowed them to see the broadcast being shown of the battle happening at Mount Fuji. Can't say that I'm not happy though. Getting to see Cassie's quirk in action again, in the hands of a hero at that, makes this all worth it. No kidding. I thought we'd never see her crazy new order again after she sacrificed herself against Shigaraki. The man securing All Might's head to allow the man to see the screen as well. Don't know how the kid managed it, but now a piece of Cassie lives on. Damn right. That bastard doesn't stand a chance against two #1 hero quirks, especially with all those other heroes supporting him. I don't know the full picture, but it was the part of me inside of One for All that helped you somehow. Young Midoriya, that day we met, and you jumped in to help young Bakugo, you inspired me to take action. All Might said nothing as he weakly raised his still working arm into the air, clenching his hand into a fist as he pointed it at the screen with Midoriya's back to him. You're already the greatest hero in my book. So, keep that fist clenched tight and win this. Back with Dekiru and All for One. As long as you breath and keep moving forward, the will to fight against me will not cease. All for One's eyes widened in shock as he felt a painful sensation coming from his hand that he raised to attack the airborne hero, the same one he had used to take the railgun blow earlier. One that was still showing signs of damage. "It's over now, Zen Shigaraki," Dekiru shouted at the same moment his fist crashed into the villain's chest with a devastating punch, but even with the pain circulating through his body, All for One's focus immediately locked onto what Izuku had just said. "How do you know that name?" All for One gritted his teeth underneath his hand mask, several veins on his face bulging and the holes in his hands spurting out blood. Izuku's glared straight into the eyes of the villain. "You can thank the first for that. He didn't want me to go into fighting you without knowing who I was fighting and told me everything during that time I was on my own. About the history you shared." "Why, Yoichi? How is this happening?" All for One could feel all of the quirks connected to his body come to a halt and something within him crack. "I should have realized that hyper-regeneration wasn't working from the moment I took over this body, that it was only its enhanced durability that was fending off the blows I was taking. Was it because Dekiru and these insignificant whelps overwhelmed my sensitivity? And I finally figured out who you are, so now our perceptions are matched up and conditions are met." Izuku shouted as he activated New Order and the embers of One for All in tandem. "I called out your name and made contact with you. New Order. Zen Shigaraki's body and soul will be unable to withstand the power of One for All and shatters to dust." All for One, no. Zen Shigaraki's eyes widened in horror as he watched as the area of his body that was in contact with Dekiru's punch began to break apart like glass with chips and pieces breaking off, almost similar to how decay used to kill its targets. No, that's impossible. I threw away that name when I decided to become a demon lord. Your original body discarded the name, but that was only your surface perception. Quirk vestiges represent a person's true self, so even if you try and change who you are, the purest true version of yourself will remain unchanged. Just like how Tenko Shimura still existed inside of Tamura Shigaraki. Dekiru explained as he kicked Zen's right arm as he tried to reach for him, shattering it while creating some distance between him and the crumbling villain. "And with that order to weaken your body even further, it can't withstand the combined force of One for All stockpile after 9 generations. Zen's eyes drifted down as he felt more of his body continue to break apart, already reaching the right side of his face as his one good eye saw his quirk creations break along with him. "So that's it. That attack into the core not only made my spirit a lost cause, but it ruined this body even more than I previously thought." Down on the ground with the heroes, each of them watched in amazed relief as All for One's quirks stopped their assaults and were actually starting to fall apart. One of the hero students from Ketsubutsu High, Yoshindo aka Grand, hesitantly raised his hands off the halted tendril that had been attacking his group. "Is it over? All of his quirks are crumbling away. Midoriya must have pulled it off." Red Riot called out as he and several of his nearby classmates and pro-heroes climbed over the large rubbles to get a better view of Dekiru and the villain, all of them seeing that the source of the destruction had a large hole in its mass. Hell yeah. The broken stolen body of Zen Shigaraki could only stare at the younger man pulling away from him, feeling nothing but the same emptiness inside of him as he did before, even as only the left upper portion of his body remained, before being quickly replaced by rage. Spikes and bars manifested out of the openings in his nearly vanquished form to hold his failing body together, truly becoming the monster on the outside that he was on the inside. "I'm not done yet." Dekiru couldn't help but feel a little stunned at what he was seeing, using his quirks so haphazardly to fight against the immutable rule I created using New Order. He seriously can't think such a desperate thing will work, right? I haven't achieved anything yet. No one can get in the way of my dreams and rob me of what is mine. All for One roared as he struggled to use his quirks to fight against his body's annihilation. "As the Demon Lord, only I am singular and absolute. If this body is going to be ruined, then all I simply need to repeat the process I did with that fool. With such a wide selection before me, all I need do is grant someone my quirk and claim their body as my new vessel. Did you forget that I made contact with you a second time, Zen Shigaraki? I won't let you have your way anymore." New Order, stacking. Zen Shigaraki can no longer take or give quirks away with All for One or One for All. Dekiru stated that he used one of the still intact giant tendrils as a stepping stone to launch himself back at the villain with his body spinning at high speeds like a tornado while rearing his right leg back. Zen's remaining eye widened in horror as he felt as if the transferability inside his quirk were being locked down and sealed tightly in the abyss of his mental scape. No. Midoriya. Eraserhead called out to his student in worry as he could see the inevitable clash that was about to occur, just as it did when All Might and All for One dealt their final blows at Kamino Ward. Noticing some movement a little ways behind him, the underground hero turned to see that Kurogiri returned to his feet, the Nomu forcing his body to stay together as his eyes locked onto the hero and villain as well. Sho, ta, yama, da, sorry, I ha. Vei, tu, p pro, tect. Shirakumo? Present Mike muttered out in shock before his eyes widened in realization and looked back up at where Dekiru and All for One were, where a large warp gate had formed between the hero and villain, and felt tears in his eyes at the sight. Ah, gimme a break. This is just like you, even on death's door, you just can't help reaching out a hand. Using everything that he had left in him, the high-end Nomu could still feel the gate and his very essence break apart. But that did not stop him as he spoke his final words, even as Dekiru's was getting close to being swallowed up by the gate. All for One? Give back? Tamura, Shiga, Reiki? His friends are wa. Kurogiri didn't finish as a pair of teeth clamped down on the small visible part of him and released an explosion that destroyed what remained of the Nomu and his deteriorating warp gate. The cause of the explosion turned out to be Katsuki Bakugo, otherwise known as Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite. Yeah, give me 1 second. New Order. The story known as Inheriting the Star and the author Dekiru Tales will only use Dynamite as Bakugo's hero name from now on. Okay, I feel better. Bakugo? Where the hell did he come from? Present Mike called out as he watched the explosion using Hiro's mangled body hover briefly before it began dropping to the ground below. Don't tell me he came here alone with his blasts instead of going to the hospital. Todoroki might have helped out with this little ski jump. Dynamite revealed as his body started to fall to the ground with smoke coming out of his mouth, his eyes never leaving Dekiru's back as he finished spinning with his leg reared back as far as it could go. Luckily for the teen, Shoto wasn't going to let him continue his dangerous descent and summoned some ice to catch Dynamite. But don't you dare let me surpass you, Izuku. Channeling more of the embers into his leg, Izuku was prepared to end this. I can't look past what you've done, Zen Shigaraki. But my perception of you is complete. No, stop? The villain, known as All for One, replied weakly. Don't low, and you're no demon lord. You're just a pathetic, lonely man that threw a tantrum because nobody in the world wanted to look at him. Izuku continued as he got close, but understanding you doesn't equal forgiveness, and I will make sure there are no remnants left, united. Quote, stay away from me. All for One shouted in a panic while raising his lone arm in an attempt to fire off a counterattack. But it was too late. World of, with his foot tearing through the remains of Zen's arm and his makeshift body parts, Izuku let out a roar as his kick slammed underneath the villain's chin with all of his strength. Smash! As his foot made contact, a bright flash overcame Dekiru's mind. I guess I should be thanking you. Don't bother. I only gave you that quirk to make Master pay for betraying me, turning you into my tool for vengeance. At least I managed to destroy something in the end. Tenko Shimura's vestige replied as his body partially restored itself. You took a page of what All Might's vestige did and used the embers inside you to awaken the other users to attack Master from within. It was only thanks to my grandmother that some part of me remained tethered as well and came back to get a blow in as well. Izuku let out a sigh as he lowered his arm. Just like with him, it's impossible for me to forgive you. After everything you did, there was no way I could let you continue in spreading all that pain, grief, and misery you felt onto the world. I had to stop you, and wanted you to stop yourself too. I don't want to fully admit that you were right about me just being a crying little kid. But maybe there is some truth to that. The scared villain let out a sigh as he felt his spirit start to vanish, this time with no chance of coming back. Izuku Midoriya, Dekiru, I have a request. In the physical world, back with Dekiru's physical body, the force of his kick reduced what remained of All for One, Zen Shigaraki's body into dust in the wind. But that paled in comparison to the spectacle that every hero on the battlefield, the civilians at the shelters, and everyone else watching from around the world witnessed as Dekiru's form hovered post-kick with his legs stretched high in the air. The darkened clouds that had stretched out for miles over the area were blown away with a single kick, letting the sun shine down on the airborne hero that came out victorious. As the hero, Deku, landed back on the ground without any injuries and the sun shining down on him, the green-haired teen turned to face all of the other heroes with a large smile on his face before lifting a fist high into the air. And it was quickly mirrored by almost every other person there. IDMOFANO 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 IDMOFANO. We both can admit this feels awkward, right? Hey. Extremely. How many times was it that we were in the exact opposite positions at the beginning of the school year? I don't think we should go down that road of irony. How are you feeling? Izuku, dressed in civilian clothing, asked from his seat next to All Might's bed, taking in his teacher's heavily injured form with full casts for his arms and legs, a neck brace and other bandages that were visible. It had been a week since the final war between Japan's heroes and villains had ended and the peace had mostly been restored to the country. There were still some low-level villains from the prison break still trying to cause trouble here and there, but thanks to all of pro-heroes arriving from all over the world to come and help, those problems were swiftly taken care of. All of the outpouring resources the other nations sent over greatly helped with the restoration process as well, with many civilians being able to return to their restored homes. Luckily, the weather was strongly in their favor as clear sunny skies allowed them to work unimpeded except for some fierce winds that would blow by, which was the exact same weather that the United States were also going through. Social media all around the world were making posts about how it must have been the result of Deku's final kick against the villain. Some commenting on how the symbol of peace had dealt a punch that changed the weather for a few hours, while the new symbol of hope had dealt a blow that changed it for a week. The newly renamed One for All hero, Deku, quickly gained a massive fanbase after that. But unfortunately, there was some bitter sweetness to the battle's conclusion as a few of the heroes lost their lives during the multiple final battles. Many had been injured as well and were taken immediately to all available hospitals for treatment. One such place was the Central Hospital where many severely injured heroes like All Might was currently being looked after, and ironically, Izuku wasn't one of them this time. Well, the doctors said they'd never had to use so many bolts to cobble someone back together. The former hero lightly joked as he looked over at his student with just his eyes, too injured to be able to turn his head even a little. How about you, young Midoriya? For someone who had fought the enemy leader, you don't appear to be in that bad of shape. Thanks to Aries' quirk and the embers I used to power it, any injuries I had before the start of the battle disappeared. I had to deal with some numbness for a bit, and the doctors had to get a proper look at me after getting a massive headache and passing out with a nosebleed after that final blow. Izuku explained as he leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, some compression bandage wrapped around his right forearm. Turns out that just the embers are able to enhance New Order in a way similar to how One for All did the Vestige's quirks, made it stronger but also the side effects to go along with it. Continuously giving out all those powerful orders with an exhausted mind was a little too much for me, and the consequences of that pseudo-blood doping I did. Thankfully, a few days of rest and eating a lot of food managed to help with the recovery process. I'll bet. Damage to the brain can be disastrous, let alone manipulating your blood flow like that. You'll definitely have to strengthen your mind if you want to use New Order on Cassie's level. Yeah, All Might? I'm just wondering if I was wrong to try and save Tenko in the end. Clenching his hands together, Izuku thought back to when he made it inside of Tenko's heart, in that brief moment when he interacted with that child he saw before All for One intervened. I managed to reach into the depths of his heart and shattered all of the hatred inside of him, but even after, Tenko was still the League of Villains leader to the very end. Toshinori was silent for a few seconds as he lifted his gaze up to the ceiling, having gone through a near-death experience myself. Let me ask you. What was the face he had on his face in his final moments? His face. Izuku closed his eyes as he recalled his final conversation with his archenemy. If Spinner ends as surviving this, tell him that Tamura Shigaraki fought to destroy to the very end. Oh, and if anyone asks, you took New Order away from me during our struggle. Alright, though I think you destroyed plenty of the old society. Oh yeah? Then I guess it all depends on what the people decide to do in the future. Continue to do your damn best and don't waste that power of yours. Dekiru. Whether or not it was the right call, unfortunately only you can answer that. But if you didn't see that crying kid, then I think you did manage to save his soul at the very least. You managed to finish what all of the previous One for All users started and put an end to Zen Shigaraki for good. God, I can't believe that after all this time, it wasn't till after the bastard died that I learned he had an actual name. It still left an awful taste in Toshinori's mouth to associate a real human name to the selfish, cruel monster he had fought against for over 40 years. I could feel it when you passed on One for All, as well as the part of me inside of it restoring New Order. How much is left? Most of it mixed in with New Order once the quirk became mine and made it stronger, but I can still feel some embers existing separately inside of me. Izuku confirmed with a small smile, not realizing that the door to the hospital room was opening. It's smoldering, but I'm sure it will eventually. Why the hell are you up and about? Didn't the doctor just say to rest? Mitsuki Bakugo shouted worriedly at her son, who was completely covered in bandages, his surgically restored arm in a heavy cast and a large brace wrapped over his entire midsection. He even had multiple fluid injections going into his body. I'm so sorry about this, All Might. He was just worried about you. And Izuku, I'm glad to see you're doing all right. Thanks, Auntie. Izuku had a relieved smile on his face as he focused on his rival, who had a stunned look on his face. I'm so glad to see you're okay, Katsuki. You've been out for almost the entire week, and I wanted to thank you for your help back there. Did you just say, embers? The shock and disbelief on the younger Bakugo's face as he processed what he had just heard was only met by a calm expression Izuku was sending his way. Does that mean, you're? No, I didn't go back to being quirkless. Back when I was fighting Tamura, One for All and All for One connected to each other once again, and I ended up taking one of his somehow. Izuku explained while clenching one of his hands into a fist. I'm surprised you didn't hear about it when you were rushing to the battlefield. I ended up snatching the quirk he stole from Star and Stripe, and the embers inside me restored its quirk factor into becoming mine now. So, I can continue to. The green-haired teen felt that whatever he was going to say next quickly died as he saw tears falling down Katsuki's face. WHWHAAAAA? Why are you crying? What the hell is wrong with me? I treated you so badly, but the thought of us not completing anymore. Even after all the shit I put you through. Katsuki did his best to rub away the tears, only for more to take their place. Why am I so? Izuku could feel his own tears start to build up as he watched his oldest friend shed tears. Hey, cut it out. This isn't like you. It's not like I'm going anywhere. Being all banged up must be making you emotionally vulnerable or something. Even though it hurt to do so, All Might lifted up his head to get a better view of Katsuki standing at the door, his parents staying out of sight in the hallway while keeping an eye on their son. The two of you have grown so much since the day we met. As Mitsuki and Masaru silently listened to the former number one talk to the two boys, the sound of footsteps coming from the corridor on their right made the parents turn to see some familiar faces walking up to them. Hisashi raised his hand up in a wave while Inko and Eri were bringing up the rear, the little girl holding her grandmother's hand tightly. But the trio weren't alone. To the pair of great heroes that saved my life, thank you. Despite the tears falling down their faces, the smiles on Izuku and Katsuki's faces were the biggest and most joyful that they had in what seemed like an eternity. But before any more could be said, the pitter-pattering sounds of small feet entered the room, making the two boys look down to see Eri making her way past Katsuki and went to her father's side. Papa, we're here to see All Might and pick you up. There are also some big men here to see you. The little girl stated as she jumped at her father's torso, giggling slightly as he caught her and lifted her up in a more comfortable hold. But a look of concern appeared on her face as she noticed the tears in Izuku's eyes. Are you okay, Papa? You're crying, and so is Uncle Kachan. We're fine, Squirt. He's right. Don't worry about us, Eri. Remember what I said when you met Grandma for the first time? Eri tilted her head cutely at that, puzzled for a few seconds before nodding her head. Oh, you're talking about happy tears, but neither of you are taking a nap. Eri, sweetie, you don't have to bring that up. Inko's voice called out from the room's entrance, allowing the four inside to see an embarrassed Inko standing there with Hisashi, Mitsuki and Masaru. Hisashi chuckled as he brought his shorter wife close. I'm sorry, Inko, but it's a little too late to get embarrassed by that at this point. The man's words did not make Inko feel any better, looking up at the man with tears welling up in her eyes. Hisashi Tilda, bending down to kiss the top of her head, the WA agent turned his attention to the man recovering in his bed. I'm glad to see you are awake and alive, All Might. The last time we were in the same room together was during that 7 years ago in Brazil, right? I didn't realize you were a part of the Century Dandy operation, though honestly I mostly just remember fighting off Dandy Silva and having trouble conversing with the South American pro-heroes. All Might let out a low hum as he took in Hisashi's appearance, focusing lightly on the scaly marks under the black-haired Midoriya's eyes. Now I think about it, I do remember hearing about a very brilliant agent diffusing some of the international tension thanks to being a polyglot and possessing a clever mind. Seems like young Midoriya inherited more than just looks from his father. It was certainly an interesting experience. All Might, I've been wanting to say this after my wife told me what you said during those teacher visits that UA did after your fight in Kamino Ward. Hisashi had a serious look on his face as he pulled away from Inko and walked up to the bed until he was standing near the foot of it, keeping his arms firmly at his sides while giving the injured retired hero a deep, respectful bow. Thank you for all the work you've done for the world for so many years. Thank you for becoming Izuku's teacher and giving him the opportunity to achieve his dream of becoming a hero. As his father, I wasn't there for Izuku as much as I should have been. The WA work did keep me away from my family more than I wished, causing me to fail in my duty to be the supporting father he needed. But even after my son had been diagnosed at Quirkless, I knew with every fiber of my being that he would find a way to become one of the greatest heroes the world has ever known. Dad. Tears were falling down Izuku's face at his father's words. Bright warm smile formed on All Might's face. I agree. Your son did indeed have the potential to be an amazing hero, even if he was too much of a crybaby when we met. All Might. What do you mean was? This selfless idiot is still a crybaby. Something he inherited from his wonderful mother. But enough about that now, I think we've kept the men outside waiting long enough. Hisashi turned his head toward the doorway. Sorry for the hold up. You all wanted to see All Might and Izuku before you left, right? Sorry to interrupt. It's good to see you again, Dekiru. Through the door, several of the soldiers from the Air Force squadron entered the room with their leader leading them inside. Good to see you're properly stable, All Might. Thanks to you saving my bacon with the emergency care you gave me, Ethan. Nah, just returned the favor after all you've done for us. Izuku bowed his head towards the Air Force squadron. You guys really helped me out after I got taken to the wrong battlefield by Himiko Toga, and even more with all the chaos that happened after. If it wasn't for all of you, things would have turned out a lot worse. Star and Stripe placed all her chips on you to be the one to defeat All for One and Tamura Shigaraki thanks to you inheriting All Might's quirk. Though I doubt when she said those words, she could have predicted that you'd also inherit New Order from her as well. The Bravo leader of the group, Ethan, stood out from the middle of the group of soldiers. We had gotten a basic rundown about those mindscapes and vestiges created from the quirk factors inside people. Does that mean Cassie is still in there? I'm sorry, but no. What she had New Order do when Tamura stole it from her had torn it apart and reduced the quirk to almost nothing. It was only because of the embers and All Might's vestige that it was able to reconstruct itself the way it did. Shaking his head sadly as he thought back to a few days ago when he had tried to re-enter his mindscape using similar methods to when he would try to enter One for All, almost giving up after an entire day of attempts only to find himself back on that beach with no one else in sight. He could feel the him inside the mindscape filled with New Order's quirk factor, and the embers of One for All had taken shape as a second setting sun that was slowly shrinking as it merged with New Order. Izuku doubted that he'd ever be able to return to that place since he no longer had a quirk that reached singularity. Izuku briefly closed his eyes as he recalled his only time back in his vestige world. The only voice I can hear inside of me is my own. But Big Sis said as much before her vestige faded away. Worth a shot. I guess she's really gone for good now. Thinking back to his conversation with the former number 1 heroine, the second request she asked of him flashed through the Greenette's mind. She did want me to pass on a message to you guys. Shifting Eri onto one arm, a large smile formed on his face while raising a fist towards the men, who were shocked as Izuku looked exactly like Kathleen did back when she was announced the new American number 1 hero and declared they would ride or die together. Thanks for everything, bros. I couldn't have asked for a better ride or die group to watch my back. Tell Commander Agpar that I'm sorry for having been such a pain. And, when you get back home, make sure to tell my niece and nephew a lot of cool stories about me." A few of the soldiers sniffed and tried to hold back their tears as they could easily imagine their deceased friend saying those exact words. Ethan rubbed his eyes briefly with his fingers. "Thanks, Midoriya. I'll be sure to honor her request." Speaking of requests and Commander Agpar, after we managed to open up communications back with America, the man himself wanted us to pass along an offer to you. An offer? Yup. He wanted to know if you wanted to take part in the exchange student program and take a year to study in America. Several top-rank heroes back in America even offered to bring him on as a work-study intern. HHHHUUUUUHHHH. The only one in the room that wasn't surprised by the offer was Hisashi, who took a thinking pose very identical to his son's and started talking. It wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. The United States has a lot of experience in training up New Order with how much they worked with Star and Stripe, and All Might did go over there as an exchange student. You'd definitely be getting a lot of good training and experience as a hero over there. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the other nations wouldn't try to throw their offers into the pot to help raise up the new symbol of hope. They'd probably have no issues with securing a home for your mother and Eri to stay if you wanted to bring them along. But in the end, Izuku, the choice is up to you. I appreciate the offer, but no. Izuku replied as he pulled in a smiling Eri close, his answer surprising a few in the room while both Katsuki and All Might chuckled lightly with knowing looks. With everything that's happened this past year and trying to rush into filling All Might's shoes, I think just staying in Japan for now and enjoying my time at UA High is the best option for me to really come into my own as the one for all hero, Dekiru, and as a person. I'd rather work hard and earn my way up to becoming a #1 hero instead of it being handed to me. Not to say that going to America for a bit wouldn't be out of the question in the future or be an extremely rewarding experience. I would get to learn more about how different the hero systems around the world are compared to what we're being taught here. Plus, it would be better to wait for Eri is older to see more of the world since I don't want to overwhelm her right now. I also have to take into account all of my friends here and how each of them fought so hard. It wouldn't be right to get special treatment or… Alright, we get it. Enough with the word vomit. Katsuki exclaimed with a sharp teeth and his angry eyes turning white, snapping the other hero student out of his mumbling storm. And who says you'll become #1, huh? Damn it, Katsuki, we're in a hospital. Stop shouting and disturbing the other patients. Hisashi had an exasperated look on his face as he stared at Mitsuki, who held back in smacking her son due to his injured state. You're one to talk. Where do you think the kid gets it from? I swear, you haven't changed a bit since high school. Huh? You want to start something, pepper breath? Anytime, Sweatsuki, sweaty Mitsuki. Inko and Masaru both sighed at the same time at their significant others arguing with one another. It was a wonder how these two were childhood best friends with how much they argued. Some things that unfortunately escalated after they became parents. At least my Izuku is a polite young man that treats everyone with respect. When was the last time Katsuki actually called you, Mom? Hisashi questioned as he pulled his embarrassed son close into a one-armed hug, which also brought a confused Eri closer as well. And he's already given us an adorable, sweet grandbaby. Dad, see, can you please stop? A twitch mark throbbed on Mitsuki's forehead before patting her grumbling son's hair. My brat may be an asshole at times, but he's still a bright kid with a good future ahead of him. He even took down that villain that almost killed All Might. You may have gotten a grandchild before me, but I'm sure I'll have more than you once Katsuki manages to find a girl that can put up with his shit. Don't insult me while praising me. An emotionally drained Katsuki muttered under his breath, still feeling a little overwhelmed after the crying, as well as All Might's little pep talk and thank you earlier. Do you really have to go through this shitty routine every time? Yeah, and Izuku finished off the other major villain, who was supposedly even stronger. The older Midoriya man was cut off from speaking as he felt a familiar pressure suddenly pull at his ear, causing him to release his son in the process. Inko. Why Tilda? The short woman had an unamused look while using her quirk to lightly pull her husband's ear, which could be considered a small object. Sweetheart, you're getting too passionate again. Please remember we're in a hospital with many injured heroes and civilians trying to rest peacefully. You wouldn't be a bad example for our granddaughter, would you? Innocent red eyes blinked as Eri was looking at the adults from her spot in Izuku's arms, her tiny hands gripping his jacket to steady herself from the constant movement. The man said nothing as his body guiltily slouched forward. He, serves you right. Mitsuki snickered, only to feel a hand rest on her shoulder. Turning her head slightly, the woman flinched as she was greeted by a look of disappointment that her husband was sending her. Mitsuki? The Bakugo matriarch mirrored Hisashi's actions upon hearing her husband's voice. It wasn't often he displayed such a look with his more passive personality, so when he did, it was a lot more effective on her and their son. It also turned her on as well, but that wasn't something she could broadcast right now. A clearing of a throat caught the two families' attention as they turned to see the amused looks the Air Force squadron were giving them, with Ethan standing at the front. As entertaining as this moment is, I think it's time for us to be heading out. We've still got a lot of briefings and paperwork to fill out back in America. While I'm sure we won't face too harsh a punishment when we return, our squad still has to answer our superiors on leaving with Star and Stripe without initial clearance and disobeyed orders to retreat. The reports we sent in can only do so much, plus, as Cassie's bros, we need to meet with her family to give our condolences. Oh, Izuku's eyes lightly dimmed at that, recalling meeting the woman's vestige in his mindscape. I wish I could go as well. But I don't know how they react to a stranger showing up with new order, so please give them my regards as well. Ethan nodded his head to Izuku's request. Will do, but I doubt they will have any objections to you, just as long as you honor her memory and use that quirk as a responsible hero. You've got a lot of eyes on you now, Izuku Midoriya. It may seem small and uncertain right now, but you becoming the one of the first pillars to support this new path the world will head in. Many will be expecting remarkable things from you and your classmates after all the stuff you lot went through. A grin formed on the American's face as he held his hand out to the teen. Just know that if you need help, our group will be happy to lend you aid. Whether or not you go to America, you're still Cassie's living legacy and someone I'd be happy to call a friend and little brother. Izuku stared down at Ethan's hand before looking up to see all of the fighter pilots grinning at him, all of them in complete agreement with their leader's words. The green-haired teen smiled back before meeting the dark-skinned man's hand with a strong grip and shook. I appreciate it, Mr. Drive. Call me Ethan, kid? Oh, and I should probably give you and your friend my sympathies for the immediate future. Especially once you interact more with the public. God knows Cassie and all might had enough of that trouble. The bedridden man let out a pained chuckle at the soldier's words. You have no idea. But it'll be good practice for them. Huh? What the hell does that mean? Hey, you'll find out soon. Good luck, symbol of hope. Time skipped a few weeks later. UA High School in June. Eek, Todoroki, Amigod, it's dynamite. Dekiru, you looked so cool on TV. Can I get your contact info? I'm a huge fan. Please, shake my hand. You're so awesome. Please take a selfie with me. Shoto had a befuddled look on his face as he, Katsuki and Izuku were trying to get away from the shrieking female students chasing after them. What on earth is happening? Why are these first years so intense? Izuku cried out with wide eyes as he looked back at the younger girls chasing after them, his face turning red as one loudly asked if he was single. Expel them all, right now, a freaked-out Katsuki demanded as he tried to get ahead of Izuku and Shoto. He didn't have to outrun the fangirls, just use the other members of the new Big Three as meat shields to get away. Where was Kirishima when he needed him?